Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News Tonight. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Tonight, we'll turn our focus to the American presidential campaign. Kamala Harris has officially accepted her party's nomination during the Democratic National Convention and will be running against Donald Trump for the presidency. But first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Indian Prime Minister Modi arrives in Kyiv after his official visit to Poland. The ruling party of Georgia vows to ban the opposition and put an end to what it calls homosexual propaganda. And our reporter gets an exclusive look at a Polish factory that makes drones for Ukraine. The U.S. Democratic National Convention has come to an end. The event's last day included a historic moment as Kamala Harris formally accepted her party's nomination as presidential candidate. Harris also brought up her foreign policy strategy. Let's take a look at the story.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
This development marks a historic moment in the U.S. politics, says Tanya Domi, a professor at Columbia University.
First of all, it's a historical convention in that the Democratic Party nominated an African-American Asian woman.
During her speech, Harris touched on some foreign policy issues she intends to focus on if given the chance to take over the Oval Office.
As president, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Domi, an expert on American foreign politics, speculates what a Harris presidency could mean for the international community.
Which I'm sure in European capitals today, including in Warsaw, people are breathing a sigh of relief to hear an affirmative, clarion voice about where she will project U.S. foreign policy if she will be elected on November 5th.
But not all experts share the enthusiasm.
Her speech, was very general. I think that what you have to look is at who her advisors will be.
Call suggests a Republican president will be a better suited ally for Poland within NATO, considering Poland is the top defense spender in the alliance.
It would be Republican because, you know how Trump has talked about how all NATO members need to pay their dues,
With both candidates now officially confirmed, the November election is sure to bring a lot of changes, but not only to American politics. NATO allies, the EU and Ukraine are patiently waiting to see who the new leader of their powerful partner will be.
The Indian Prime Minister was in Poland yesterday, and today he visited Ukraine, met with President Zelensky, and announced his readiness to make a proactive contribution to ending the war. Now we move to Kyiv to our correspondent, Oz Chatterjee. Good evening, Oz. How's the Indian Prime Minister's visit being assessed in Ukraine?
Good evening. I think this will be seen as a diplomatic coup for Zelensky and for Kyiv, given the situation that was with us a few weeks ago, where Narendra Modi was visiting Moscow, and that was the same day that Russia struck the Okhvydyat Children's Hospital, famously targeting the Children's Hospital, causing huge amounts of hurt to the people of Ukraine, and it drew a powerful condemnation from Zelensky himself. So in only a few weeks, we've seen this historic trip, the first from an Indian premier to an independent Ukraine, and one in which Narendra Modi stuck a very humble and respectful tone towards Ukraine and the Zelensky government. They took a press conference earlier. Let's take a listen to what they both had to say about this meeting.
No conflict can be resolved on the battlefield. The road to resolution can only be found through dialogue and diplomacy, and we should move in that direction without wasting any time. Both sides should sit together to find ways to end this crisis. I want to personally thank India's Prime Minister for beginning his visit by commemorating the Ukrainian children who have been killed by the Russian army. They killed the children with their aggression. I am very thankful for this commemoration of Ukrainian children.
Now, it should be noted that India is a close partner, and Modi in particular is a close ally of Vladimir Putin. However, this specific visit has struck a different tone from when previous Putin allies such as Viktor Orban and South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa have visited. Those visits have had a slightly different tone, a slightly more dour and formal tone, whereas Modi kind of embraced Zelensky quite warmly and seems to have taken, lots of messages being released in Ukrainian, which in and of itself is a political statement to make when visiting the capital, Kyiv, for someone who is traditionally seen as a geopolitical ally of Moscow. So a lot to take in here, and I think the Zelensky government will be very happy with the way this trip has panned out so far.
Right. A lot to take in indeed. Thank you so much for the update, and please stay safe out there. Appreciate it. Now, Ukraine has intensified its long-range bombing campaign in recent days. Ukrainian drones are mainly targeting Russian air bases and fuel depots.
The fire at an oil depot in Proletarsk is raging for the fifth day. The facility, located in Russia's Rostov region, some 350 kilometers from Ukrainian-controlled territory, was hit by drones on Monday. The fire has consumed an estimated $200 million worth of petroleum products. This attack on Proletarsk is the most visually striking element of a months-long drone bombing campaign aimed at degrading Russia's oil infrastructure. Ukraine has also attempted to use drones to target Russian air bases and destroy aircraft on the ground. This has its limitations, as slow-moving drones are easily detected long before they reach their targets, allowing the aircraft to be moved. To fill this capability gap, Ukraine has been pushing for permission to use Western-supplied long-range missiles on Russian territory.
Thank you for the accurate, timely and effective strikes on Russian airfields. Our Ukrainian drones are working exactly as needed. But there are things that drones alone cannot do. Unfortunately, we need other weapons, missile weapons. And we continue to work with our partners on long-range solutions for Ukraine because these are far-sighted decisions for the sake of our victory.
The Russian Air Force has been a major factor in limiting the advance of Ukrainian forces and degrading their defenses. Destroying Russian aircraft on the ground with drones and missiles could prove to be a cost-effective way to tip the balance of power in Ukraine's favor.
A wanted notice will be issued for a former head of the Polish governmental agency for strategic reserves. The Polish National Prosecutor's Office has issued an arrest warrant for Michał K. Let's take a closer look at this controversial story.
The agency takes care of gathering, holding and managing reserves, including fuel. The spokesperson for the Polish National Prosecutor's Office spoke to the media today to explain the situation.
We're talking about involvement in a criminal organization, for one, and a crime of malfeasance involving an overreach of authority and a failure to perform an official duty.
The charges Michał K. is facing have severe consequences.
The prosecutor intends to file charges that would carry a prison sentence of up to 10 years.
The decision has caused many controversies in the world of Polish politics.
The court has spoken. A warrant will be issued for the arrest of the former head of the Governmental Agency for Strategic Reserves, for the arrest of the conman specializing in respirators and generators. He can hide, but he will not escape justice. What happened today is yet another despicable act of revenge by the Tusk gang. The victim this time is the former head of the Governmental Agency for Strategic Reserves, Michał K. This is a win for the persecutor and the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau. The investigation into irregularities at the Governmental Agency for Strategic Reserves is reaching the very top of the former Law and Justice administration. We will continue to persecute this fraud.
The whereabouts of the man were unknown, and the prosecutor ordered the suspect to be taken into custody so that a wanted notice can then be issued.
The persecutor is working on it. I don't know how long it's going to take and whether we'll have it today or Monday. I understand the persecutor is taking this very seriously, and it will be ready as soon as possible.
The main concern in the case is the overreach of authority.
Georgia's ruling party has had enough of political backlash and has vowed to eliminate its biggest critics in parliament. The Georgian Dream Party has promised that should they win a majority in the upcoming elections, they will outlaw the country's largest opposition party, the United National Movement.
Politicians in Georgia are already elbow-deep into campaigning for the upcoming parliamentary elections. Set for late October, the elections have taken on a new meaning this week, as voters will not only decide who sits in the parliament, but also who will even be allowed to.
So what we're observing now, Georgian Dream is in power for the last 12 years now, and now they realize that their reign is coming to the end. So they have the hysterical fear, and they need to show somehow to their voters that they're not afraid. And their major line of propaganda in this election is that they're going to ban the UNM or any associated opposition party with the UNM.
In the eyes of the Georgian Dream, the United National Movement, UNM for short, and its founder, Mikhail Saakashvili, were responsible for the 2008 Russian invasion of Georgia. They also said the UNM wants to open a second front in the ongoing war in Ukraine. While the party has been unable to provide any evidence supporting that claim, the statement is enough for them to consider making the largest opposition force in the Georgian parliament unconstitutional. Meanwhile, the honorary leader of the ruling party and the richest man in Georgia, Bidzina Ivanishvili, has been decried by critics as an unofficial ally of the Kremlin. Ivanishvili amassed much of his vast wealth by doing business in Russia. While the ruling party claims they need a majority in parliament to make their dreams of outlawing the opposition come true, analysts say they could still appeal to the Constitutional Court to ban any party promoting war or violence without a majority.
Actually, it's not up to the political party to decide if they're outlawing another opposition by another political party. It's the Constitutional Court. So what we're hearing is purely, Georgian Dream trying to manipulate the message for their electorate.
The Georgian Dream has also been involved with curbing what it calls homosexual propaganda, as well as foreign influences in the country. LGBTQ activists and EU hopefuls have organized numerous protests against the direction in which the ruling party is taking Georgia. Unfortunately, none of these demonstrations were enough to make the Georgian Dream reconsider their approach. With elections inching closer by the day, 6 of the main Georgian opposition parties decided to join forces to stop Georgian Dream's ambitions and give the ruling party a wake-up call.
85 years ago, Nazi Germany and Communist Russia signed the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, setting the stage for World War II. Communist support gave the Nazis the resources they needed to conquer most of Europe before the two totalitarian regimes turned on each other.
On August 23, 1939, the foreign ministers of Germany and the Soviet Union, Joachim Ribbentrop and Vyacheslav Molotov, signed a non-aggression treaty, but a secret protocol to the agreement established spheres of influence in Europe. A little more than a week after the pact was signed in Moscow, German troops invaded Poland. The Soviets followed 2 weeks later. Both regimes immediately began mass killings and deportations of what they deemed undesirable parts of the Polish population. By the end of the war, every 6th Pole was dead. For the next 2 years, the Soviet Union supplied Nazi Germany with key raw materials. This enabled Berlin to conquer Western Europe. Meanwhile, the Soviets took over the Baltic states, as well as parts of Romania and Finland. German diplomats tried to bring the Soviet Union fully into the Axis alliance, but Stalin's demands proved too ambitious. Berlin decided instead to attack the Soviet Union, launching the largest invasion in human history, which resulted in more than 25 million deaths. It ended in Soviet victory, allowing Moscow to extend its control over half of Europe.
Today marks 35 years since the longest human chain in Europe's history was formed across the Baltic states. Spanning nearly 700 kilometers, the chain was formed to demonstrate the desire for independent statehood.
Commemorative events are underway in Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia as the countries celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Baltic Way. On August 23, 1989, around 2 million Lithuanians, Latvians and Estonians joined their hands to form a human chain stretching from Vilnius to Tallinn. The peaceful protest marked 50 years since the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which divided Eastern Europe into German and Soviet spheres of influence for decades to come.
That 50-year anniversary, it was, well, in such a moment, in such a time of enthusiasm, it was an extraordinary event. The alignment of all the stars and all the planets.
The message was clear, as Soviet leaders were gradually losing control and the dissident movement within the bloc was growing. The Baltic states were ready to take back their freedom.
We were saying that we would not be satisfied with partial solutions, with merely being given more freedoms. No, we wanted it all.
The Baltic chain of freedom was formed at a time when the independence movement in all three Baltic states was growing stronger, and Moscow's control was weakening. Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia gained their freedom soon after.
What matters is just being together. It is important that we not only talk about this event every 5 or 10 years, but commemorate it every year. Let's not forget that the Baltic Way has influenced many people in a positive way.
The presidents of Latvia and Estonia marked the anniversary alongside local residents living near the border between the two countries. Both heads of state stressed the importance of remembering that there are still leaders who want to divide the world into spheres of influence. They also reiterated the need to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia.
Drones have changed modern warfare. Their use in the war in Ukraine has proven crucial for Ukrainian forces, especially amid shortage of artillery. Ukrainian volunteers are now producing them in Poland.
We're in the drone factory in Warsaw, which is run by a group of Ukrainians. These volunteers put together equipment which later lands on the battlefields in Ukraine. A 3D printer, a soldering iron, a screwdriver, and some knowledge. This is what it takes to make a drone. Please tell me what's first in this production process of these drones.
Okay.
Here we have all the parts necessary to produce this drone. Here's the frame. This one has already been put together, with motors mounted to it. Later we have to mount these fiber optic connectors.
The volunteers have set up a production line to speed up the process.
A couple hours is okay to make 50 drones, 50 FPV drones. And one drone costs about 2,000 zloty.
How many drones have you manufactured so far?
About 150.
This type of drone used to be manufactured for sports and recreation. Today, its main purpose is much different.
Its range is 7 to 10 kilometers in this size. It's handy for reconnaissance groups to inspect suspicious territory.
What such drones are capable of can be seen daily with footage posted by the Ukrainian army.
We were facing a severe shortage on the front line when our partners were unable to deliver large shipments of artillery shells to us on time. It was exactly FPV drones that helped us stop the enemy then.
Thousands of UAVs such as this one are being used on the battlefields in Ukraine for reconnaissance and bringing help to those in need. This is just one of many places where such drones are produced. Marek Steele, TVP World.
Campus, the Future of Poland, has kicked off in Olsztyn, Poland. The 7-day event has drawn over 1,500 young people to debate about the future of and social issues in Poland. We go live now to our correspondent, Sasha Papa, who is on location. Sasha, so we know a lot of young people are there, but as well as a lot of high-level politicians. Can you tell us more about this event that is happening over there?
Hi there, good evening, Ben. Indeed, you're right. Exactly right now at this moment in time in this expo center right behind me, we have the mayor of Warsaw, Mr. Trzaskowski, speaking here to a full audience here and alongside Prime Minister Donald Tusk. So this is a moment here, both of them talking very much, reaching out to the youth. This whole idea here is about the future of Poland, speaking to those young people, reaching out, trying to find a place where they can speak about the future, various themes here, also about technology, about culture, about social activity. It's a full crowd in there, and very much, of course, as these two gentlemen, very much at the top tier of Polish politics at this moment in time. We were hearing earlier when Mr. Trzaskowski spoke, he opened up this 7-day event here, and as you rightly said, Ben, there are over 1,500, maybe more young people here over these next 7 days. And it's very much about energy, about youth, about social issues, and very much about politics. But I think you can see and hear at some of those sessions here, different sessions that'll be out here in Olsztyn, in beautiful venue here by the lakeside. This is really an opportunity for young people, but also high-level politicians here. In the next few days, we'll see also high-profile guests coming from Brussels, for instance. Ms. Jourova, the Commissioner for Justice there, is coming here next week as well. Former Prime Minister Sanna Marin also joining here. So a lot of activities over the next few days, but very much a reach out to the youth of Poland, but also, as we've heard, also reach out showing that a young Poland, a dynamic Poland is there, and that's a good thing for this country and for the region. Ben, back to you.
Right, young and dynamic indeed. Thank you so much for the update, and please keep us updated. Appreciate it. We now turn our attention back to the U.S. presidential race from a Central Eastern European perspective. Democratic Party candidate Kamala Harris has stated in her speech at the DNC that, quote, "I will stand firmly with Ukraine and the allies of the United States." She added that this is the most important election in the history of the country, while calling her political rival Donald Trump a frivolous man whose victory could have serious consequences. Joining us today on TVP World to explore the foreign policies of the U.S. presidential candidates is Roman Rewald, a U.S. advisor to Credo. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Here, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So we are looking at Kamala Harris's announcement in the DNC when it comes to foreign policy. Do you expect an extension of the Biden presidency and its foreign policy, or are we looking at a different set of policies?
Well, I think the whole process of Kamala Harris in order to win this election is to distinguish herself from Biden and propose some new solutions, because the fact is that the Biden might not have been as successful in winning the elections with his positions on many things. So she needs to have some distinction, but nevertheless, she is incumbent. She is the part of the existing administration. And during the convention, you could hear people saying that she did this and she did that. It was done together with Biden, but now the Biden is happy to assign to her the advantage of having those accomplishments that are quite numbered, and he's allowing her to say those are my accomplishments, so she can build on what's existing. But he needs to show much more in the future in order to maintain this enthusiasm that the recent yesterday finished convention has produced.
Right. So like you said, Harris is now balancing between maintaining the Biden policy while being distinguished itself from the Joe Biden presidency. When it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to the question of Ukraine, what do you see being different, or what do you see being the same when it comes to the policy going forward if Harris becomes president?
It is the same, which means that the whole convention did not really focus on Ukraine or for that matter, for Gaza war. And only in this final speech of the acceptance, Kamala Harris finally had a passage on both issues. So for Ukraine, she said, we will stand with Ukraine, we will be there, which Biden has said before. So this is not any different. The question is whether or not Kamala Harris is going to loosen up the restrictions that the U.S. government has posed on the Ukrainian government in usage of the American armament against the Russian territory. It looks like it's already happening because the Ukraine is attacking Kursk, but how far that loosening up of restrictions is going to go, it remains to be seen. We haven't heard anything from Kamala Harris on the subject. By the way, the Republicans point out that Kamala Harris have not given an interview ever since she was nominated or became the potential nominated person of the Democratic Party, and that's remains to be done. She needs to have more interviews and allow people to ask her questions. So far, she was just speaking from the pre-prepared screenplay, but she's going to face on September 10th the debate with Trump, that will be a lot of questions that she would have to answer.
All right, so when it comes to the question of Ukraine, like you mentioned, it was really briefly mentioned during the DNC, and of course it remains a big question mark, at least on the side of the Democratic Party. Now, you also referred to the Republican Party. What can we know about their foreign policy if Donald Trump becomes president? Well, do you think that his harsher stance on NATO will impact the support that U.S. give to Ukraine?
Well, Kamala Harris said it very succinctly in her speech that Trump is not a serious person, but election of him as a president would be a serious matter. The problem is that Trump is not speaking about policy either. He is not saying what he's going to do. There are some people who are saying on his behalf what the issues are, but Trump is now limited in his speeches and his rallies to basically personally attack Kamala. That's his best approach, and he, despite the fact that people sort of demand of him to speak on issues, still goes back to basically complaining about the fact that there is no Biden, but Kamala he has to face in the election competition. And this doesn't give us much of a insight of what the Republicans are going to do. And the fear is that based on his previous not very well organized policy on international law, international affairs, it does not give us a good perspective of what he's going to do when he becomes president. It's rather Kamala who is saying what Biden is saying. We will stand behind Ukraine 100%, and certainly they are going to support NATO.
Right, so it does seem like when it comes to foreign policy, both parties seem to be a little bit foggy when it comes to messaging, which is relatively interesting. Do you have any theory as of why foreign policy, especially important subjects like Ukraine, wasn't actually really touched upon in these stages of the electoral campaign?
Well, there is a simple explanation. For Americans, the foreign affairs are secondary or tertiary issues. The most important is what's happening in the local community, economy, stupid, as Clinton used to say, the matters of climate change, the matters of gun control. There are many issues that are facing Americans on today's market, and the foreign assistance is quite foreign to electorate. So no wonder the convention did not focus on the foreign affairs, focus on the issues that might win them elections. You saw that J.D. Vance, the candidate for vice president on the Republican side, basically says, we don't care what's going to happen to Ukraine. That might give you an approach that Republicans might have when Trump wins. Kamala Harris at least said in her speech, we are going to support Ukraine as we do now, and as long as it takes.
All right, so like you mentioned, foreign policy, especially foreign assistance, seems to be an afterthought for a large part of electorate. But when it comes to providing these foreign assistance, it does have to come out of the pocketbook of the taxpayers. Do you think that the apathy towards foreign assistance, adding to the fact that they have to pay out of their tax dollars, would actually be something quite touchy when it comes to the subject of supporting Ukraine and might actually hurt them in a way in the campaign?
No, that's not my observation. Any resistance to assistance to Ukraine is run and driven by other political issues than the issue how much it costs the United States. I mean, the United States has spent a fraction of its budget so far on helping Ukraine, and we have to remember that all the money that is spent on this assistance stay in the United States, because basically U.S. is producing manufactured weapons and ammunition, which is manufactured in the United States. So the money is spent within America and just products go to Ukraine. So it's not necessarily affecting the American taxpayers' pockets that much. There are other issues like the 6 months delay in the last statute we had provided assistance to Ukraine was caused by the Republicans wanting to do something totally different, not related to Ukraine. They were just holding Ukraine assistance as a hostage. So that's where the problem lies, rather than in case of with respect to the money that is to be spent for Ukraine. That's not an issue.
Right. So definitely there's a lot more factoring into this topic. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you for inviting me. Goodbye.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News Tonight. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.